Okay. Okay, so yeah, hello and welcome wherever you are. I'm Reinhard from UBI Lab Leeds, and I would like to welcome everybody to our online discussion, Basic Income for the Arts in Ireland, What Have We Learned After 32 Months, with 4 Irish artists, Alisha Doody, Finan, Tadhg Cuirrín, and Lauren Conway. We have also invited other Irish artists and the National Campaign for the Arts, but we are not sure whether they are coming. And Tadhg, an independent researcher from Maynooth University, who has spoken to several artists in the pilot. The Irish pilot will end in August this year. I would like to remind everybody that we provide a respectful space where critical and civil questions are encouraged. However, we will not tolerate any disrespectful comments. We have a chat section for comments and questions. I would like to ask you to put a Q in front of your questions so that they can easily be identified and found in the chat. You can also find the timeline of our event and useful websites in the chat. I would like to inform you that our event will be recorded and published online at UBI Lab Arts YouTube channel for further use. In case you have concerns about the recording, please raise them now or send me an email. You find my email address in the chat. I also want to say, if you want to view only the speaker of the event, you need to change the view from gallery to speaker. The organizers of this event are UBI Lab Arts, UBI Lab Network, Basic Income Ireland, and UBI Lab Leeds. I will briefly present UBI Lab Network and UBI Lab Leeds and provide a brief introduction to our topic. UBI Lab Leeds is part of the international UBI Lab Network. I would like to thank UBI Lab Network for the technical and organizational support of our event. Our common goal is the advocacy for and achievement of a basic income for everybody as a social foundation. Therefore, we call it Universal Basic Income. Why do we advocate for universal basic income? Universal basic income, or in short UBI, can provide a social foundation for everybody. UBI can help to address the social, ecological crisis in our world. UBI can also promote innovation, creativity, research, social and political participation. And it can help to transform the structures of our society based on hierarchies and power to networks on care for each other, for nature, and future generations. Universal basic income would mean money for everybody and the empowerment of people. We think that basic income for the arts pilot scheme in Ireland is an important step in the right political direction. Therefore, we are very happy to host this 6th event, Basic Income for the Arts in Ireland, What Have We Learned After 32 Months? I will briefly introduce the concept of basic income and inform about other basic income schemes, followed by Toby from UBI Lab Arts and by John from Basic Income Ireland, talking about the specific Irish context, and Jenny talking about her findings in her analysis of the BI Arts in Ireland pilot. The following may be a repetition for some who have joined our previous events. What is the concept of a basic income as defined by Basic Income Earth Network, also called BIAN? Basic income is a periodic payment, so basic income is paid at regular intervals, for example, every month, not a one-off grant. It's a cash payment, so it's paid in an appropriate medium of exchange, allowing those who receive it to decide what they spend it on. It is not therefore paid either in kind, such as food or services, or in vouchers dedicated to specific use. It's paid to the individual and not, for instance, to households, like most social security payments are. It's universal, so basic income is paid to all members of society. And it's unconditional, so basic income is paid without a requirement to work or to demonstrate willingness to work and without means test. Other important factors to consider: a common argument against UBI is the question of funding. So often it's argued it's a good idea, but just too expensive. Therefore, it's important to understand that UBI is just a redistribution of money in society. It is not spent on material resources. So it's collected and then redistributed so that everybody has a secure social foundation. The funding of UBI can be done in different ways. My personal favorite options are fees on the so-called free use of our global commons, such as air, land, water, minerals, sun, wind, and also taxes on wealth, closure of tax havens, closure of tax loopholes, and tax exemptions. Implementation can be through the state or municipalities or an independent basic income trust. What are other interesting BI programs and pilots around the world? I would like to mention the Marica program in Brazil, where 40% of the poorest people in the coastal city of Marica are receiving a basic income. And this municipal program is ongoing and serving as a model for neighboring municipalities. Therefore, the next Basic Income Earth Network Congress will be held in Marica in August this year. There are pilots in Kenya organized and financed by the civil society organization Give Directly, several pilots in different cities of the United States. A pilot in Germany with 122 participants has just been completed and was financed by the civil society organization Mein Grundeinkommen. The evaluation has shown large improvements in mental health, purpose in life, and life satisfaction. A Welsh pilot for young care leavers will end this summer. The pilot has proved popular, with 97% of young people who were eligible taking part. You can find further information about these different pilots and programs in the chat. I will upload them to the chat. And I pass on now to Toby from UBI Lab Arts and then John from BI Ireland. They will speak about the specific he will speak about the specific Irish context, and Jenny Dack will present some of the findings from the Irish pilot. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a good webinar. Thank you.
Thanks for the introduction, Reinhard. Hello, everyone. My name's Toby Lloyd. I'm one of the co-founders of UBI Lab Arts. UBI Lab Arts is a group of artists and art workers who are interested in using creative methods to deepen and broaden the conversation about universal basic income. We were founded in September 2020 during the pandemic, when meetings like this were quite common and it was quite good to meet up and discuss things like universal basic income. We were one of the first labs, but was set up to explore and represent people from an identity perspective rather than a geographic location. So the previous ones were UBI Lab Sheffield or Liverpool, for example, and then we were one of the first ones to represent an identity. Other labs which represented identities were UBI Lab Youth and UBI Lab Food, I think. UBI Lab Arts uses the term arts in order to represent a wide range of creative practices, from visual artists to musicians, theatre makers, dancers, and others. We include arts workers in the definition as we acknowledge that many people working in theatres, galleries, and music venues are artists and musicians themselves, and are often working in these spaces in order to support their practice, or at least attempt to support their practice. Many who do this don't have the time or energy to make art or write music after their day job or their night job even, especially if they have caring responsibilities. And this is a key reason why we support the idea of a universal basic income, as it would create more space and time for artists to make their work at the same time as enabling more people to explore their creative potential. It would also mean that there'd be more audiences, more people have time to experience the arts, whether it's going to a gig, reading a book, visiting a gallery, or going to a football match, etc. So UBI Lab Arts exists both to research and better understand universal basic income and its implications on a wider society. We often do this through sharing and testing and applying creative and artistic methods to complement the work done by other UBI labs and academics who are campaigning for pilot schemes across the UK. So we acknowledge the importance of research and empirical data to make the case for a universal basic income. But we know that narratives are what really changes people's minds. For example, if all we needed evidence to convince people to sort of take on a policy, we would have solved climate change by now. So UBI Lab Arts believes that arts can help bring human stories to life and activate people's imagination, which isn't always the case when they're looking at graphs or statistics. And a good example of this is how the television dramas like Mr. Bates and the Post Office have really been able to raise awareness of issues and bring about actual change. It's been a real privilege for UBI Lab Arts to be part of these online events. I personally haven't been able to be part of them myself, but Andy Abbott, my co-founder, has been facilitating most of the discussions up to now. And it's been really great to hear the experiences of the artists taking part in the trials as recipients of the basic income or as part of the control test. And I feel that these events and conversations will play an important role in shaping the discourse around the future of the trial and hopefully more trials of basic income and hopefully bring about an actual basic income for everyone in society. Okay, that's all I've got to say for now.
Okay, so over to Jenny and John, please.
Right, so I'm John Baker. I'm from Basic Income Ireland, and our website is in the chat. I'm going to give a very brief summary of the pilot project and the current situation. So Basic Income for the Arts Pilot Programme was started under the last Irish government by the Minister for Arts, Catherine Martin. She was a member of the Green Party, which has a long history of supporting basic income, and the Greens were part of a coalition government with Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. The pilot began in October 2022, and the recipients will receive their final payments this August. Now, its stated purpose is to assess the impact of a, quotes, basic income style, unquote, payment on the arts sector. And it has 2,000 recipients who were selected at random from over 8,000 eligible applicants. They're getting €325 per week, which is treated as taxable income. There's a control group of about 1,000 other arts workers, and all of the participants report regularly on various aspects of their work and lives. The department has issued 3 reports on the impact of the scheme, and all of them are publicly available on the government's website, which I'll put into the chat now. The most recent report came out last week, and we're delighted that its author, Jenny Tadhg, will talk about its contents in a moment. Now, a new government was formed in January and consists of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael again, and a group of independents, but conspicuously absent is the Green Party, which was the main proponent of the scheme. Nevertheless, at the launch of Jenny's report last week, the new minister, Patrick O'Donovan, said, and I quote, "I'm heartened by the responses of the basic income recipients in this paper. This research will add to the evaluation being conducted by my department, which to date clearly shows that the basic income pilot has been an effective support for the artists in receipt of it. Per the programme for government, I will evaluate the data from the pilot and then bring proposals to government about next steps." So we may see fairly soon what will happen next, but we have no information about what that might be. Now over to Jenny.
Thank you very much, John. And thank you very much for inviting me here this evening. And hello, everyone. My name is Jenny Tadhg, and I'm a lecturer at Maynooth University in Ireland. In June of last year, I was commissioned by the Department of Culture, Communications and Sport, which is now, to qualitatively explore the experiences of artists receiving basic income in Ireland. So to do that, I spoke with 52 artists across art forms with varying demographics to try and understand the impact of receiving basic income in their everyday lives and for their profession. So to complement the survey data that is gathered every 6 months as part of the pilot research, we agreed to explore themes such as income stability, practice development, recognition and opportunities, community engagement and social impact, and reflective and future-orientated aspirations. So a real wide thematic areas to explore. So across these themes, there are a number of interesting findings that are collated at the start of the report, and then throughout the report, we hear how artists experience those findings. There are too many findings to go through here this evening, so I have selected 5 kind of beneficial findings that I think cut across art forms and demographics that are worth highlighting. So firstly, I found that the stability of the payment has significantly reduced underlying financial stress to provide relief and peace of mind that allows recipients to experience a reduced sense of anxiety about meeting their basic needs. So the regularity, the unconditionality, and the assurance of a continuous payment really feeds out into other facets of everyday life, like the ability to plan ahead, to perhaps save, or to perhaps build up a small financial safety net. And this then enables scope for future possibilities. Secondly, recipients emphasized their effort to reflect and reprioritize their work practices. So saying no to work opportunities reflects greater artistic autonomy as they prioritize their own creative development and focus on higher quality, more meaningful and long-term projects, commissions and collaborations. So the sense of a safety net from the basic income enables artists to reform their work practices and reflect on what is important and meaningful for them to spend their time on. For some, this meant that they had a 3-year plan and goals that they set out to achieve within the timeline of the scheme, or for others, it meant that they focused primarily on their creative practice and reduced alternative work that supported them financially. And it really was this sense of and reflection on, what have I always wanted to do with my time and what have I wanted to achieve up to now? This is a real opportunity. Thirdly, recipients report that the time devoted to researching, experimenting, taking risks, and failing has improved the quality of their work. So for many, they talked about feeling like they were being paid to do the hard creative labor, the thinking, the experimenting, the finessing of their work, and as opposed to being paid for the outcome, which often does not take the hours of labor into account. Fourthly, being in receipt of the basic income has stimulated increased self-belief and confidence for many recipients, which is encouraging them to reach out to other artists or their artistic community and participate in events. So whether it was taking courses, going to events, engaging with communities, recipients really emphasized their vigor in being more socially and professionally engaged. And they attributed this to less financial anxiety and the sense of validation that receiving the basic income gave them. And fifthly, and just last, across art forms, recipients reported concerns about financial stability and sustaining the momentum of their careers when or if the basic income scheme ends. So this relates again to their mental health, where they fear the return of that underlying financial stress, as well as returning to greater precarious conditions and not being able to balance their work practices as they choose. They also spoke of the broader socioeconomic context, as the cost of living in Ireland is high, the cost of getting work beyond the developmental stage is difficult, and the difficulty in accessing and receiving arts funding. So there are just 5 to get us started on what the report contains. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. That's great to hear all these positive findings. So now it's over to Toby, because I don't think we have got anybody from the National Center.
Okay. Great. So, well, yeah, thank you very much, Jenny, for those findings. I think that's really fascinating to hear. I think particularly for me, what stuck out was the artists feeling that they're getting paid to do the hard work, which isn't just the creating or finishing the painting on the wall or whatever. It's all the mental preparation and all the other skills and development which goes into it. Brilliant. So I'm really pleased to welcome Shane, Lauren, Alisha, and Tadhg back to these events and this conversation. I'll start by asking you all, the first question, and I'll let you each join in and respond, and then we'll hopefully develop a nice flowing conversation from there. So I guess the first question is, can you tell us what your recent experience of being part of the trial, whether that's as a recipient of the basic income or as part of the control group? And I mean, has this changed over the last 6 months? I know we spoke to you all in December, but has anything changed particularly in this last 6 months for you? And yeah, can you just, any other insights to your own experience? Who'd like to go first? Do we need to pick on someone? Okay.
Sorry, I can go first. Sorry, I have 2 screens, so let me know if I sound like a robot at any stage.
You don't sound like a robot now. That's brilliant. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me all right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're speaking over the last 6 months. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose it was sort of interesting what excuse me to get your name again there, Jenny, what Jenny was saying as regards people who went in to focus on a specific kind of thing in the studio, or people who went in with a plan per se. I think I probably touched on this in the last meeting as well, but I suppose I would have been one of those people who kind of went in with a kind of general plan as what I wanted to do. So I was awarded or not awarded, randomly allocated the basic income yeah, about a year after I graduated from college. And so I was always looking towards kind of doing postgraduate study afterwards. But in the last 6 months, I was able to successfully apply for scholarship funding to do a master's at Goldsmiths, which is, pretty significant, especially considering, the fees for that course at the moment as well. But, to the end of the basic income, I wouldn't have qualified for that scholarship had I not been in receipt of the basic income and able to grow and develop my practice fairly significantly over the last couple of years. So that's been, a really huge benefit of the basic income. So it's sort of, it really does pay, somewhat exponentially, just having that really small, basic, as you say, stability and kind of social security net underneath you. So I might I'll let other people continue on, but yeah, that's a fairly significant one for me.
Alisha, would you like to go next?
I was going to wait to see who you picked on. That's fantastic. Congratulations, Lauren, by the way. The last 6 months, yeah, it's been an interesting 6 months for me, because I did have to make a decision over whether or not I would return to my teaching post full time after taking some leave of last year. And so I kind of reached a kind of critical moment around January where I was running full steam ahead with a piece of work, and it was starting to get really full on, but then I also had the full-time gig, and we didn't actually get funding that we applied for to continue to finish out that piece of work that I was doing with the community that I was working with. And I suppose now I see that in some ways, like, it probably would have crushed me if I didn't have the basic income behind me, because I would have been so dependent on that funding to continue to do what I was doing, and for, yeah, being able to maintain all of the other things that were happening. And I suppose that's scary to think about, because I know it's coming to an end. And that, yeah, how dependent we are on those funding streams, and how devastating it can be when we don't get them, and how secure I felt knowing the basic income was still there, and that I could work for free for a certain period of time. So yeah, I'm worried moving forward. I don't want to maybe move the conversation directly into that, because I know it will come up, but it is, yeah, it's kind of tense now, because it's so close to the end. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tadhg, would you like to go next, and then we'll finish with Shane?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the last 6 months have been busy, but not busy doing my own work, I guess. I was doing work, like working as an assistant to another artist, and as they developed work for an exhibition, it was kind of a long-running and ongoing project. And then I took on some extra work, I guess, kind of with a view to the future as well, not knowing what would happen after the end of this, after the end of the program. So I took on a kind of a job managing some art studios. So kind of doing a lot of work and a lot of voluntary work as well, with different artist-run organizations, particularly the Praxis, the Artists Trade Union. And I'd kind of consciously kind of thought that since I was getting this basic income, that I had this kind of extra capacity to do that kind of work that that other people mightn't have, that I should give something back, as it were. So yeah, it is kind of interesting to think of the whole what will be 3 years of spread and what one has actually done in that time. And I remember at the time thinking I should set some kind of clearer goals, but it was kind of more, just to kind of give more time to it. So it's, you can always look back and say think about what might have been, but I guess I can't complain too much. And I've obviously I've gotten a lot out of it.
Can I just follow up with the volunteer work? Was that the kind of thing, would you have done that work before, or is this the first time you've
No, I would
volunteered
have. I would have always worked in some capacity in artist-run spaces, and that's usually voluntary work. And and I had been kind of even before the basic income came along, I was kind of looking for something, looking for some way to kind of give back, because even before the basic income, I was more comfortable than some, I guess. I was fortunate. My rent is cheap. I had enough income to kind of get by a bit. So I was fortunate, and I was kind of like, thinking of ways to give something back a bit. So.
Great. Okay, thanks. And then Shane, how's the last 6 months been for you?
Thanks, Toby, and congratulations as well, Lauren. That's super news. The last 6 months, you gave me 3 more people's worth of time to think about that. So now I have lots of things spinning in my head, and I don't want to talk too much. So I should qualify now. For those who haven't been at the other events, I am not in receipt of the artist basic income. I am on what they call the control group. So I fill out a survey once every 6 months to say what it's like to not be in receipt of the income, so that they have a point of comparison in the quantitative qualitative and quantitative analysis that they do in that, which is not the report that Jenny was involved in, but another report that was released. So I guess when we spoke last time, I kind of mentioned about how myself and like most other artists that I know who are not recipients have kind of stopped thinking about this. Like it had kind of gone out of the conversation altogether. Because I suppose we just moved on with our lives and we're still on precarious income, and you're just chasing the next contract, and there's always what's going to happen 6 months down the line. I need to get another thing. I need to get or otherwise you just don't pay your rent, and that's not a good situation to find yourself in. And then in January, our last conversation was in December, and in January the deadline came around for what they call the Artist Bursary Award, which is like a twice a year released award in Ireland, which is the kind of main big award that you can get. It's up to 20,000 euros. It's to cover kind of like just your basically your living. You don't necessarily have to create a project in response to it. It's kind of a support for artists on a kind of a year by year. It's very competitive. But this year, the number of applications went up from, I think it was 1,150 odd to about 1,800 and something. So more than a 50% increase in the applications. Why that happened, is actually, I don't even know if anybody's done an audit on that. I think that there are some, maybe Tadhg, you have some ideas. I don't know if you're not in there, but I think there were some assumptions thrown around about like the way that they changed certain kind of funding streams for, like there was another smaller award called the Agility Award, and they changed the way you were able to apply for it. But also, I would imagine that there's something to do with this kind of wind down of the artist basic income scheme, and people getting the same kind of worry that like Alisha and Tadhg just spoke about, that you kind of like think, you know, I have to go back into work, and also I have to find another stream of income. But that also puts pressure on a system that's already underfunded, and I don't imagine the amount of awards that are going to get handed out are going to increase by 50% as well. Not that funding and competitive awards is a good way of handling this anyway, but it's also going to be very hard on a whole lot of people now. And then, yeah, and kind of more recently, so in April, my partner and I and our daughter have been given notice of eviction on the rental that we're living in, which is something that I kind of thought about, like, because when we started this, I think Alisha got an eviction notice, if I remember right, about 3 months or 4 months into this, and you talked about how having the basic income made that so much more tolerable. I think you didn't say it made it easy, but it was like you kind of had my memory is something, you had a bit of a safety net that was underneath you. And I've also been thinking about that, and thinking about like what this could have been in this situation, because right now my current streams of income, the projects that I'm working on, I basically don't really have any income coming in after, I don't know, I suppose August is maybe the last time I'm going to get paid on a current project. And I've been seeking kind of like future projects, but also now I have an eviction notice to get out in November, and I'm like, well, even if I took on something by November, I don't know if I have to move house, and I don't know where I'm going to get income from that's not coming from there, and I'm completely in this kind of like totally juggling area. And neither of us have a particularly like big income, my partner or I, so it's kind of, we're quite dependent on like having some sort of a stream coming in. So the kind of conscious thoughts at the minute are on that like absolute like kind of bottomless pit of precarity that like you kind of like dangle yourself over. And I think at different points in these conversations, been quite interesting to have these 6 months gaps each time, because at different points in these conversations, I think we've all kind of like found ourselves like teetering towards that edge, and then kind of like pulling back and so on, because there's been one thing or another that has kind of created a massive amount of precarity. And in the context of this conversation, like obviously if you're talking about having some sort of universal basic income, or a basic income that like allows people in very precarious kind of like, you know, self-employed roles or whatever to kind of have that safety net, that would have changed this situation dramatically. You know, it's for maybe also for context, it's very, very difficult to find a place to rent or to buy in Ireland right now, and I think that's also the case across the UK and Europe, and also restrictively expensive in an awful lot of cases. So if you're kind of lucky enough to have a place, you sort of want to hold on. So yeah, that's a kind of a roundup. So.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Shane, and I hope that, yeah, I hope things improve. But I know that, yeah, it's yeah, like you said, these things happen to all of us at some point, unfortunately. So, and you know, you've all mentioned the fact that the pilot is going to end soon, and again, the increase of the precarity, or the sense of dread that is bringing about. But before we talk about that, it would be, you know, maybe nice just to recap or just to reflect on how your experience of being part of the pilot, how that has affected your creative practice. You know, how, you know, for those who have been receiving the basic income, you know, have you felt under any pressure to perform better or work harder? I know, Tadhg, you said about doing voluntary work. And, you know, also, have you felt happier with the type of work you've been creating? Or do you think that the quality has changed because you've had the basic income? I know that there's some people might say that they would step back from their practice a little bit, which gives you more time to do that sort of more expansive thinking about work, instead of just churning things out for exhibitions or to sell, for example. So just, you know, if you could all just, you know, just say a few sentences about your experience of the trial, and in terms of how it's actually affected your practice. And then should we go for Tadhg first this time, and then we'll.
Yeah, I don't know. As an artist, I'm never happy with what I make, in one sense. But looking at it a little bit more objectively, yeah, I've no, there it's not all crap. but how the basic income is kind of fed into that, or how that kind of how having that is fed into it, it's yeah, it's difficult to quantify. But I mean, I guess the fact of being able to step away from it and not do anything, like these, I guess these processes are they kind of, they have, not that they come in waves, but should I say, you can't always be operating at like your high level when you get on a good run, on a good roll of making things and having professional successes out of them. You kind of need to enjoy it while it's there, because then you'll kind of fall out of it again at some point, and you'll be in a rush, and you'll be there for like a bit. And I think, not that no amount of money can fix that, but it's not a thing that has a financial kind of cure, and you just kind of need to wallow in it, in the doldrums, and you need to kind of try different things, and then you try and then you get inspiration, I guess, right? It's kind of old-fashioned or whatever, but you're looking for some kind of, you have some kind of writer's block, and then you find something, you get inspired by something, and hopefully you get going again and you make something cool. So I'm not sure what part of that cycle I'm in at the minute. Maybe coming back up again with some luck.
I mean, and do you think that might have been easier or harder if you weren't in the trial?
Well, certainly if I had to be doing more work that wasn't my own work for work for money, then yeah, that would probably be more difficult, because it's less of your time. I don't think it's not they're not like perfectly in balance in that way. But yeah, certainly there are material realities that impact upon your ability to do something, and time is a big one of them. And that's it, as much as anything, time as much as money. So that answers it.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Tadhg. Alisha, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm thinking about that a lot, actually, Tadhg, while you were talking there, and it's really complex. It's really difficult to kind of quantify. And I think I've always found that really challenging to answer this question, actually, out of all of them, because I suppose when I answer some of the questions that are on the survey and the data set, I feel like, am I meant to be doing those things that it's asking me questions about? Because my practice doesn't always, it doesn't always end with an exhibition. There isn't always this penultimate moment where something gets completed and there's a big hurrah and everyone cheers. I sometimes find myself working with communities and it's down a rabbit hole and it doesn't go anywhere. And the security net of the basic income is that I don't have that pressure, that constant kind of chip on my shoulder. But in some ways, the survey also did that. Because, we had the pressure, and I talked about this in some of our earlier sessions, of feeling as though we wanted for it to come across that it was really productive and it was super helpful, and please continue it, because I want all artists to experience this. And then you see a question like, how many exhibitions have you had, or how many times have you presented your work, and things like that. And I'm kind of going, well, I don't really do that. Should I be doing that? And that was always a kind of, maybe a kind of insecurity that I carried anyway. And that's just the practice that I sit in sometimes, and it does take a long time for it to come around, and there's a very much a duration aspect to what I do. And I suppose doing that within a pilot, sometimes I feel like, oh, am I doing enough? Is it visible enough what I'm doing for a piece of research like this? But yeah, it's really messy and complex, and I do feel good about it. I mean, if you ask me about how I feel and has the basic income supported me in my practice, then yeah, definitely yes. But is that always visible in the research? I don't know.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess you could argue that if you're working with a community, you're presenting the work to them every single day. So it's how you measure or how you view that. But again, yeah, that's probably for a different conversation, isn't it? Great. Okay, Lauren, can you tell us how you feel about it?
Sorry, yeah. Sorry, would you mind just confirming, are we speaking on the last 6 months or just the duration of the basic income again?
So we're looking, more in terms of the whole trial and how you feel it's affected your practice. But I mean, if you want to focus on the last 6 months, that's fine as well.
Okay, no, just to confirm. Yeah, I think my work has certainly changed significantly. In a way, obviously that has been, really supported by the basic income. But I was also, I guess as someone who had just recently left college, I do wonder if that might have happened, to a certain extent already, So when I was, before the basic income, I was working only in pencil on paper. And to be honest, I found that was a really good medium for me to work in. And I had a lot of sort of that I felt I could communicate within that sort of medium. But as well, I had always wanted to paint, but it just didn't feel like a viable option, just kind of like Tadhg was saying, given the sheer amount of time it takes to build up, a competency in it. And as well, the expense of the materials, particularly when I was a student, and sort of just being quite nervous about it as like a fairly ambitious sort of a skill to develop. I was, to be honest, a bit terrified of the idea of being an oil painter. It seemed impossible. So a lot of things came together. I got a graduate residency, and as part of that was able to attend the RHA schools in Dublin. So it's similar to the Royal Academy, but it's smaller, and they do very practical courses in painting and drawing, which are really excellent. But while I was on that residency, I was able to partake in those courses, pretty much on a full-time basis because I had the basic income. If I hadn't have gotten that, I might have had the same residency, but I could have been working 3 or 4 days a week, in a cafe, which would have disqualified me from, or not but it wouldn't have been possible to do those courses. So it was sort of a perfect storm of different things coming together. But the basic income, really underpinned the ability for me to take those opportunities and develop my work, because it's no good having an opportunity to do something if it's at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday and you have to be working in an office somewhere, you know what I mean? So that's a really significant part of it. It's not even the money, it's being able to meet somebody for a discussion around your work, or to do a course, or to attend a workshop, or whatever it might be. So I learned a lot about oil painting. I really significantly developed my drawing practice. I was able to take sort of risks, like making quite large scale work as well, and making more ambitious sort of work, because I knew I would be able to sustain the momentum. I knew if I made a big work and someone gave me a show, I could deliver on it, rather than making lots of small stuff because they're easy to store under the bed or whatever. So it's really been, transformative. And I think like Tadhg is saying, it's kind of hard to see it once you're in it. I had to kind of take a bit of a step back from making the last 6 months, because there was quite a lot of work I had done, and I needed to sort of focus on what was going to come next after, we fall off this cliff face together with the basic income. But yeah, it's developed pretty significantly, I suppose. But I haven't changed mediums hugely. Like, I haven't started welding or anything. But yeah, the oil painting was a big one that's really opened doors, even though I still want to maintain, a lot of the work that I was doing earlier as well. Sorry, I'm conscious I'm kind of going on a bit. So Yeah, thank you.
Yep, don't worry. No, that's great. That's yeah, really nice to hear. And yeah, like especially where he's saying taking a step back and yeah, thinking about the next stages and everything. So Shane, yeah, do you want to, if you got any reflections on how it's changed your practice or affected you knowing about the trial and everything? And
No, I was just thinking maybe that's what Lauren was just saying segues quite nicely into the next question. And I think maybe this one skips over me a little bit anyway, as I'm not in receipt and I don't really have a great thought about it. But the follow-on question after that, maybe we can I'll talk to that one.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, as we've said, and it's kind of, been the elephant in the room up to now about the pilot is ending in 2 months. And, can you all reflect on or tell us how it's affecting you? I mean, has it changed your intentions about the kind of work you're planning to make? Or, have you made the choice to focus on the future finances and less on the creative practice? And, can you tell us how it's making you feel? And also whether the department has given you any guidance about the next stages. So I feel like Shane, I mean, I don't know if this is affecting you. Maybe would you like to address this first?
No, I'm quite curious to hear what everybody else is saying. When we spoke in December, again, I'm just going to refer back to these because I think that there's a kind of a legacy and an interesting kind of sequence of meetings. And I know that they were linked there earlier. If anybody missed them, if you wanted to look at any of the recordings or even just look back in some parts of these conversations, we did talk a lot about there was 8 months remaining, I suppose, then, and we talked about that a lot. And even at 8 months remaining, it seemed like it was just around the corner. I imagine that for you now, it's 2 months remaining. It seems so much more desperately close. It's funny to kind of think. Sorry, it's not funny actually, but it's kind of it's sort of strange to think about it, I guess, because it feels like it just started. 3 years doesn't seem possible that this is 3 years in, but it's 3 years has passed by in the blink of an eye. I'm kind of glad that I'm just not going to be filling out those surveys anymore. I think I said it in December. I was actually I sort of regretted a little bit signing up to the control group in the end, because it just became so depressing filling out that survey once every 6 months. I'm kind of thinking about this again and be reminded of it, and then going okay, well, I have to put this away. So it doesn't, but it's not affecting me, I guess. So I should have probably passed that one too. I'm only just throwing a bit of humor in, really.
No, but I mean, I think it is really important and again, we'll talk about how other artists have received or have perceived the trial and everything. So that's a really, really great to get your reflections on it. So, I mean, we just asked Lauren to speak. So Ashlyn, would you like to go first this time? Alisha, sorry, I'm forgetting the names.
No, you're okay. I was just double checking. Sorry, can we go back to the question? I got really sidetracked by what Shane was saying there and the humor. So we're talking about ending of the pilot, right?
Yes, and how is it making you feel? And I guess, are you starting to make plans for or instead of focusing on work, are you focusing on finances and preparing nest eggs or whatever? I don't know.
Yeah, and I spoke about this in December, and choices that I was making at that stage to return to my full-time teaching post, because I knew I was kind of given a choice to return or to sort of not go back to teaching, and I knew the end of the PI was coming, so I better go back, because the security blanket isn't going to last forever. It's kind of funny to me that it's ending in August, and that the tax season is going to be fast approaching, and you're going to be paying taxes on everything you earned when you don't have that income anymore. But obviously that's just the way taxes work. But yeah, I suppose I'm going to have to consider the time and the momentum that's been built, and then how to diffuse that amongst the hours that I have teaching. So that's the sort of bigger challenge that I have in terms of maintaining my practice. And what I've been able to achieve. And then the other side of it is, I suppose, applying for some of the funding streams that Shane mentioned earlier. I know that there is a bursary application that's due in about 6 or 8 weeks, specific to the field of my practice, and whether or not that's something that maybe would be able to cushion me remaining part-time in a teaching post, so that I can continue to work on the things that have sort of got a little fire under them and have that momentum and things. So it does, yeah, it feels very precarious, or it feels like you're opening the door to that precarity and the stress and the anxiety and all the challenges. There's a little bit of me that doesn't want to let go of the optimism that I have, that maybe there's some sort of political will, you know, to kind of continue it, maybe not immediately, but in the time thereafter. So yeah, it sort of depends on the day. You know, I can wake up some days feeling great about it, and some days I feel really stressed about it, you know. That's sort of where I'm at. But it's definitely there. It's definitely at that at the front of kind of planning for the next 6 months to a year, you know.
Okay, well, great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Lauren, would you like to say a little bit how the end is making you feel?
Yeah, it's certainly, to be honest, I've kind of, maybe it's just the way I deal with things, which isn't necessarily the best, but I've been thinking about the end of it nearly since it began, if that makes sense. But yeah, certainly, you know, I do feel, you know, really, really fortunate that I've managed to kind of kick the can down the road a bit. And I've sort of, yeah, been able to sort of extend the amount of time I can sort of not have to worry quite so much about basic expenses through this scholarship, which is really, you know, surreal and fantastic and brilliant. But, you know, I've been kind of thinking about nearly this kind of like false extension I have, you know, once I finish this master's, much like people were saying regarding momentum, it's like, God, I'll be falling off a cliff face then, if that I'll be stuck in London, where the money is twice as expensive and I'll have nothing. But I mean, that might be quite a dramatic way of looking at it. But yeah, certainly, it's really flown by. And it's really, it is quite bizarre how accustomed you become to it. You know, I try to sort of maintain a sort of practical view of it, but it is nearly strange to feel like it's ending. And again, like particularly coming to it as a younger person, I feel like I kind of went, oh, brilliant, great. All of the people older than me have decided that we're just going to have this money now forever. So it wasn't, you know, I did understand it as a really unique experience, but I didn't have quite as much practical experience sort of working without this money. Like I had maybe a year and a half working full time and piecing my practice together. It wasn't like I had 5 years of that or longer. So yeah, it's certainly very kind of unable to sort of, I don't feel like I have a good grasp on the reality of it ending because of my personal situation, but I am also really hopeful that they're going to continue it, you know, because, you know, the 3 years has flown, the 2 years I'm sure will go even faster, and I'll be having all these conversations again. I did hear a really strange rumor from a friend of a friend who was in a meeting about something that I need to follow up on, and he said apparently they were going to give everyone an extra year or 6 months or something, but I don't know where that came from. And I haven't confirmed it. So there is all these kind of strange whispers going around about, oh, maybe this will happen or maybe that will happen. And you find yourself getting sort of hung up on them being like, oh, maybe we will have this like big headline in the newspaper about it being continued. So yeah, it's been, yeah, the whole experience has been surreal. Okay, I'm gonna end there. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much. And yeah, Tadhg, do you want to say how you're feeling about the end looming?
The end. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose that it's the end is one of the fundamental differences between this scheme and a basic income, and like the fact that it does end makes the participants within the scheme behave differently. And Alisha has kind of touched on that, thinking about, like, you know, what you have to you have to know what's coming down the line so you can make choices about your life. And I think we talked about that in December, that if it was going to end or if it was going to be maintained in some way, people needed to know soon. You know, people needed to know in December, if not before then, so that they could make choices about their lives. And so I mean, as to like all the political speculation of recent times about what may or may not happen, I mean, I was surprised that there was such positive pronouncements about it from the minister. I've been skeptical of everything since before day one. I was like, they'll never do that. They'll never do that. And I've been wrong at every turn. So I'm hope to keep up my record of being wrong, and that it may be kept up in some shape or form into the future. What that is in the future, I think, is interesting. Like, I mean, if they keep calling it a basic income of some kind, surely that means that it needs to maintain for the people who are on it, and then that it would be extended to more people. If they're not doing that, it seems like it's not really a basic income, and that it's something else, that it's kind of multi-year art grant that's chosen by lottery, which, you know, that's a good thing too, but then would they have to call it something different? It would seem strange to just dump 2,000 people off it and pick a different 2,000 people. But anyways, but yes, as to my own circumstances, I think I said already, I took on some work managing an art studio, and if I can kind of keep that to 15-20 hours a week, that could be enough money and enough time, and that will come with its own stresses, but you know, I can't complain too much. I'll try and make it work.
Sorry, I wasn't unmuted. So yeah, that makes sense. So I guess it would be interesting to this, you know, obviously the question is for all of you, but maybe Shane is the obvious one to ask this to, in terms of over the last 2.5 years, how do you think that other artists have thought about the trial and going on? You know, how has it been received by them? What is your feeling? I know we spoke about it a little bit in the first one, but now, especially as it's coming to an end, how do other artists feel about the basic income trial happening in Ireland?
Yeah, I don't think I'll try and represent all other artists. So either, and I mean, I think it's a very dangerous thing to try and answer on behalf of. But I think, I suppose, to kind of like reiterate, I'm part of an artist collective in North Leitrim. So we have 5 artists who are core members, and then we work with about, I don't know, it's been about 20-25 different artists in the region. On kind of project by project basis. So I kind of have a lot of contact with artists, I guess. Like, and I also work with the Leitrim Sculpture Centre sometimes, which is another arts organisation. It's also based in the same town here. And there's a network of about 80 or 90 different artists who are also in the region, who kind of come and go from that space. So there's a lot. I mean, it's a very much a kind of a community here, and there is a lot of conversation. So without trying to answer on behalf of, I guess this is also something that has been in the conversation, and I suppose like trying to think of like how it's been in the conversation. I think when we spoke in December, I also said this, like, for those who are not in receipt, it really had gone out of the it seemed to have gone out of sight, out of mind altogether. Everybody was just talking about something else, like, you know, what residency was coming up, or what they were doing with the time, or, you know, what the studio practice was. It just wasn't. I mean, maybe it was kind of a thing of like, it didn't kind of it didn't have enough immediacy. It's come back into the conversation now with the kind of news reports and the sort of like the kind of teetering towards the end, and you can see how people are sort of now talking about it again. And there's this kind of like there's a lot of, as Lauren was saying there are a lot of kind of, there's an awful lot of misinformation, or kind of like mixed up, muddled up information. Some people are talking about it as the artist stole. Some people are saying that it's going to be given to everybody, or that it's not going to be given out again at all, even though they've now kind of committed to it. And which all of these are possibilities, I suppose, as well. But it's the fact that like kind of these stories have kind of started to spread as if someone somewhere has announced this, but nobody has announced anything with any concreteness, I don't think, anyway, other than that one statement that said that like they were going to renew. but not telling us what that would look like or how that's going to manifest. So that's been the kind of like the peak of the conversation right now. I'd imagine that's only going to intensify over the next couple of months as these things ramp up. And also, as Alisha was saying, so the second round of the bursary award is coming up, and I think that's also going to. It's already gotten people talking about this because it's a significant payment that artists can receive if they're I suppose deemed worthy by a jury of their peers. So it's a kind of it's a what they call it it's a competitive call that's peer reviewed by other artists and people who are working in the arts. That nonetheless, like it's seen as kind of like one of the kind of core sort of strands of income, and like Alisha and possibly Tadhg and Lauren are already thinking about kind of applying to these, and so would many other artists. And that will also be kind of like have people thinking about like, no, do I need to, or like what is this going to be? Not having any knowledge of what that's going to be is a bit frustrating, and I'd say for most people, but I'd say very particularly for those people who are currently in receipt, because I can't imagine what that's like to be kind of like teetering over the edge of not having that income anymore. I don't have I have the luxury of not having to worry about not having the income anymore, if you know what I mean. So it was never even in the consideration in the first place when you don't have it. I guess, yeah. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that of course. I mean, because I remember right at the start of these conversations, you were saying how there was, you knew some people who were receiving it and people who weren't, and there's just like the general perception of the trial. I remember, sort of like some people thinking that it was a great idea, others not so sure, and I was just wondering if that's, that kind of sense of like whether they think that the trial is a good thing, or whether, if there's any resentment, or whether we think that it should be like rolled out for everyone. I mean, obviously. No, I won't put any words into your mouth. Just, is there any sense of that?
No, they're interesting questions, and I'll pass it on actually, because I actually can't really answer them. I mean, it's interesting questions because it kind of opens up this idea of like, have we reflected on what we think as people who are in receipt or who are not in receipt of what this has been? And I haven't had that conversation actually. I don't think it's ever been kind of like, was that worth it, more than as much as the qualitative and quantitative analysis have come out and said that what the government think it was worth, or what the researchers think it was worth. But as artists, I haven't had that conversation, but maybe somebody else has. I'll open that to the room.
Yeah, does anyone want to jump in?
I mean, I suppose if it's just wraps up in August and nothing more happens afterwards, there will be a kind of a sense of like, well, what was all that about? And maybe I mean, like the kind of qualitative research that Jenny has done, that like I think we've spoken before about, that kind of stuff is of value, hearing those stories. And there will be, in some people's cases, work that was made during that time, and like, obviously these things are an output focus, but what an artist, like what we generate socially is less interesting in some ways than the things that we make, the art that we make. That's the business that we're in. That's like that's the great thing that we can sometimes make if we're lucky. So I can't remember what that's the question, so I'll let somebody else jump in there as well.
I might jump in. I recall at the very beginning of the basic income being rolled out, a lot of media and reading commentary on like news articles, and there was this sort of, or even I think it was still Twitter at the time, a lot of commentary about, why artists, and there's an aspect of unfairness, the fact that it was a lottery, and the guilt that people felt about either being selected, or this kind of silence that permeated the first 6 months of receiving it, this sort of secret payment that you got. And because it started circulating in the news, and Shane, you reminded me of this actually after we've been having additional meetings and within Ireland with Basic Income Ireland, a couple of us trying to kind of help, and Toby, it would be great to pull you into some of that conversation as well, and see how maybe artists can support that campaign that they have. But following a meeting last week, I happened upon a post on Reddit that shared the news article about the minister's comments that it was a very positive take, and it seemed promising to continue it, and the commentary underneath that Reddit post was almost identical to the very, very initial take on what it was. So I think if you look at a newspaper article and Twitter and Reddit from 2.5 years ago to now, I don't think there's too much of a difference in the general perception of it, in terms of fairness, in terms of the artists. You have both sides of the argument. People that are saying we'd be nothing without the arts. You wouldn't be able to watch the television. You wouldn't be able to put on the radio. We wouldn't have anything. And other people saying, well, it's not fair that it's just artists. Of course, I'd love to sit on my arse and do nothing. And, all of those really terrible things that people tend to think. So I think there's a long way to go in terms of changing a general perception. But in terms of any artists, and people have become more vocal in the last maybe 8 to 12 months about being in receipt of it or not in receipt of it, in a little bit more open to discuss it if you're kind of in a networking environment with them, or maybe not somebody that you know very well. We're talking about it more. I think artists are talking about it more, but I don't know that a general perception has changed.
Yeah, that's interesting. I remember at the start, maybe that was one of the things which I can't remember who said it, but almost that there was that level of guilt, or that thing of when the people first found out they were receiving it, there being a whole like looking around the room, kind of like who's got it, who hasn't got it, kind of thing. So yeah, okay, that's interesting. And I mean, I know we are getting very close to time as well. It'd be good to open the discussion out to the audience soon. So maybe we'll just finish on these last thoughts. I mean, I'll let Lauren chip in as well, but yeah, I'll let Lauren respond first, and then I'll maybe like round off with one more question. You need to unmute, Lauren, sorry. Oh, you're still unmuted, sorry. So you're still mute. Lauren, sorry, we still can't hear you.
I think it's possible Lauren was listening on one device and then speaking
Okay.
on another one. That might be why she had two devices, so
Okay.
she may have muted one.
Lauren?
Sorry, 1 second.
Yep, we can hear you
I was
now.
saying,
We can hear you
just
now.
to totally run through that quickly again. Sorry, my double system gets a bit confusing. Yeah, I was kind of really guilty about it and really unsure about if I should tell people or not tell people, if it would upset them or if it was just good information to have. But as I've kind of come through the pilot scheme, I kind of thought, much like if I was on the other side of things, I think being maybe as open and as transparent about my circumstances is maybe the best way forward, and I think as well, kind of like much like what Shane was saying, it's like I feel like it's kind of dropped off the map for a lot of people. I will kind of speak about like my kind of very limited experience of being in an international context. I was on a residency in the UK, and I would sort of, I would explain to people that I was on the basic income and stuff, and there was like, the people were like, wow, that's amazing, and like kind of just like really almost despondent about the situation in the UK. I know the DYCP is like sort of the equivalent of the bursary, and I met people over there who've had incredible practices shown in Whitechapel, wherever you name it, been working for 20 plus years and have never gotten a DYCP payment, and I was also speaking to some friends over there recently, and they were like Lauren, how do you make a living? What do you, because I guess like you have this kind of speckled artist kind of practice, and I kind of explained to them and stuff, and I think most people are genuine or are probably quite polite about it, and they kind of go, oh, interesting, and I think maybe there's more going on under the surface. I'm sure if I was in that position, I'd be asking much more questions about it all or whatever. Yeah, I think a real mix of just getting on with things, and maybe we haven't heard a lot from the people who haven't been supported by it. I think it's fairly reasonable to assume people are maybe just, somewhat cynical about the idea of it being renewed, because the news is so up and down around what could potentially happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a lot of speculation, and probably best to be to assume the worst. I say, which is and then hopefully, like Tadhg said, you might be wrong, and good things will happen. So I'm aware that we've only got about 15 minutes left, so it'd be really great to open the discussion up to the audience. And I'm not sure what the system we have for this. So Reinhard, are you taking over, or it's just the?
I haven't seen any. Yes, I
So
haven't seen
Michelle
any.
has her hand. There's 2 hands up. It's whether people would like to ask their question directly, and I think we can unmute them. So Michelle, would you like to go first, and I'll try and unmute you. Do you want to unmute? Sorry, I think it's. I don't know if you're able to. Johnny might need to. Here we go.
Yes, hi. Well, there's a lot. No, it's not really. It's very interesting, and there's quite a lot to say. I was on the control group, so it's also interesting to hear what Shane had to say. Well, I thought the 650 euro that came in very handy every March. I'm going to miss that. One thing I wanted to say was that on the one hand, it seems like one of the main negative feedback I've had was because it was a limited, both a limited cohort and limited time. That seems to have been where most tensions were. I don't think it's fair for you not to have been notified, like you said, at least in December, to have some ideas about what's happening to you. I think that's not really fair to have treated you that way, to leave you in limbo. I was kind of like in the document. I'm slowly working my way through that report by Jenny, and I'd like to thank her. It's really valuable to have that, and it's absolutely fascinating. And some of the feedback, one that really I felt really touched by was this artist saying that that she was dismissed from other artists because they were saying, oh, for you it's the stakes are not the same because you're getting the BIA, and that's kind of like if she wasn't in the same, she was in sort of privileged position, which kind of felt like a very tough situation to be in. That sort of, and I can completely understand that some of you felt reluctant to say you were in receipt. So I think all these negatives really because there was only a limited cohort, and because it was limited in time. And so I just would like to add that the Praxis, the Artist Union of Ireland, is trying to come together to put a paper, a position paper, to help to campaign for the continuation of the basic income for the arts. So if any of you want to join Praxis, of course, but also if you want to give some testimony or add some things to the campaign or point of view you want to add, well, you can contact Tadhg, but because you will have his contact, but or me, I'm in part of the basic income working group in Praxis, and we are going to meet soon. So if any of you want to, even as kind of guests, want to be part of that meeting, you're most welcome. And we should organize that soon. There is election, so we'll get the election over, and then but this is something that we want to campaign for and to lobby for with the department and with the Art Council to find, to try to address the negatives that they may have been and how to address those. So, yep. Thank you very much for all that. It was really fascinating. Thanks.
Right, that's great. Thank you very much. Does anyone want to respond to that before we go to the next question? No. Okay. So Matt, would you like to unmute? I think it's,
Yeah, it's very similar actually. It was kind of that feels very distressing. The pitting of people against each other. And I think in the UK, the media do loads of that. And it's about support for kind of recipients and what would make for effective support around that. Like, you know, people challenge you as being undeserving and, you know, kind of everything like that. And I'm involved in Manchester in kind of some feasibility stuff about, you know, maybe piloting some of this stuff in Manchester. And yeah, kind of if we ever do get some money to do it, I kind of want to know how we can best support people through that process, because there will be quite a lot of it.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Yeah, that's yeah, good to know. Sorry, I'm trying to feel these things. It's Sabina Hegarty, are you able to? And you said you couldn't put your hand up, but you'd like to ask a question. I don't know, Reinhard, if you could help with that, or Johnny could help with the tech with that.
There's one question
Yep.
in the
Sorry,
chat.
Reinhard. Sabina's just going to ask her question.
Okay, just go ahead.
Yeah, hi Toby, hi everyone. I'm actually in the control group here, and I feel it's been lovely to be on this meeting. And apologies, I joined a little bit late. But I'd just like to pick up just something that Shane said a little while ago, that people had forgotten about it. That wouldn't be my experience, and even myself personally never for a second forgot about the hope that we've all been living in for 3 years, that this will be rolled out to all of the people that need it, to help with their practice, to help with their work, to help with their life and support their work as living, working artists. And I suppose it's a difficult situation now that nobody knows what way this is going to go. But I just want to say that anybody I know, one of my best friends is also in the control group, and she would certainly, I know, and I don't like speaking on behalf of anyone, but I know for a fact that she would also feel very strongly that she has been waiting with bated breath. And the difference that something like this, something so powerful, can make to all of our lives. My background is journalism, and I write, and I have been having to work to pay a mortgage. And I know for younger people here that to have a mortgage even is a privilege with everything that's going on with the housing situation. But I would certainly give that up in the morning if the BIA was to actually materialise. I would absolutely, without question, give that up. And it's not that it's a job I don't like, I'm self-employed, it's just that I want to write. And that's how much that means to me personally. And I'm sure I'm speaking to a lot of people and to your hearts about this. It just means so much to, and I'm in my 50s now, to be able to turn around and to write. And I did the MPhil in creative writing in Trinity, and to fulfill that would be just absolutely mind-blowing. And I just feel that very strongly, guys. So I just wanted to get my little spake in there. So.
Great, thanks very much for your contribution. Yeah, I completely understand that. And for me, it's also just your comments there just make me think about just generally, not just for artists, if everyone had if it really was universal, then the amount of people who would be able to, not necessarily give up all their jobs, but yeah, be able to put more time to things they care about, whether that's caring for people or exploring creative things they've not been able to do.
Absolutely. And I've had, I've been even with being on the control group, even getting residencies and stuff, I've been able to expand my writing practice. But I mean, just to leave it on the last word, if this was rolled out for the people that need it, it would, in my opinion, be very, very life altering for us all. So I suppose we're all just living in hope at this stage. And hopefully we won't all die in despair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that does quite nicely bring us to another question which Reinhard's friend Michael has put into the chat. So I've not been able to read the whole question, so I'll just read it out now. Hopefully I'll do him justice. I understand and agree with the powerful case you have made for UBI, but do you agree that a job guarantee has a more important complementing UBI part as full employment in the context of fully democratizing the workforce, thus shifting power to the mass of people within, hold on, sorry, the emoji's covering something. So the mass of people within an ocean of goodness and knowledge and wisdom. It seems to me that the only way to save the world from the abyss of the edge of which we now find ourselves. A final point, having listened, my understanding that the job guarantee that everyone should be eligible to do what they're doing within the job guarantee scheme. So I hope that I've made yeah, I hope I haven't completely garbled your question, Michael. But I don't know if anyone on the panel has a feelings about job guarantee. I know there's lots of different versions of job guarantees, as similar as basic income. So we might be talking across purposes on your actual thing, but for me, I think that the idea of a job guarantee, in theory, could be a good thing if everyone is able to access work or access an income from the work that they do, whether that's creative work or caring work. That sounds good to me, but I don't know if anyone else on the panel has any opinions.
Would you mind just explaining really plainly what you mean by the job guarantee scheme? I'm not familiar with it.
So I am probably the worst person to ask that question because it's been a long time since I thought about job guarantees. Reinhard, do you have a better definition of a job guarantee for us?
Yes, as you said, there are lots of versions, and I mean, I know Michael, and I'm very, must admit, I'm critical of job guarantee. But the idea is basically to everybody who is not employed or is looking for a job, that there is a job guarantee, and the last provider would be the state or the municipality to offer a job so that you have a secure income. Rather than the basic income. So there is some overlap, but there is also some difference in the sense, because as I said earlier in the beginning, that the basic income is given without any conditions, while with the job guarantee, you get offered a job, or you can demonstrate, as Michael said, that you are doing a job already, and this is then recognized as your job, and you get the money, similar to a basic income. But there is this intermediary of a job, the job guarantee, and a job, which is different from the concept of a basic income. I don't know whether I made myself clear.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I guess the concern, I guess, what people have about job guarantee is that the government would be forcing people to do work, or people who aren't able to work, they'd be forcing them to do jobs which they don't want to do or don't find satisfying, where I guess the argument of the UBI would be that it means that everyone can do work which is satisfying.
And also in terms of artists, then comes the idea, who decides whether what you are doing is true artistic work and acceptable to receive this sort of money as compensation. So, but I mean, you may want to, I don't know whether you feel able or want to comment on it and what you think about it.
It seems, from what I understand of this question, I feel like it probably, in my realms of like abstractly considering it for the last 30 seconds, seems like potentially more politician and government friendly, but but much like you were saying there, I feel like it's maybe there's quite a dangerous gap there between who decides what work is, or is that really malleable, or I'm sure there's much more educated people on it than me, but yeah, I think what's to say you couldn't have multiple different basic incomes, arts income, caring income, I don't know, writing income, X, Y, and Z. I think the job guarantee, just on a just totally personal and like kind of initial reaction to it, seems maybe potentially problematically vague. But again, I'm an artist first and foremost, so yeah, my background would be in that. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it right now.
Yeah, I think for me, as somebody that works in this field and is self-employed, it feels a little riskier. Particularly, I mentioned earlier on about even the pilot and the research questions, and that sort of assumption that I would be performing or presenting as part of the outlay of what I do, you know, and I would have some questions, I think is it, but I wouldn't. Yeah, I think Lauren, you hit the nail on the head as somebody that's like literally just learned about it and thought about it for 30 seconds. I don't have anything more than I felt myself hesitate.
Yeah, I think Lauren's right that it's the kind of thing which on paper sounds more more politician friendly, or would go down better in the Daily Mail or whatever newspapers. But Johnny has very nicely put links to more information about job guarantee in the chat. So if you do want to know more and form a more informed opinion about it, then please follow those links. I'm very aware that we've hit 8 o'clock. There is one comment I'd like to read out from Steve-O. It says, if the scheme is to be continued or expanded, then out of fairness, the control group should be included. I mean, I think that's one aspect of it, isn't it? I mean, I would really like the basic income trial to be expanded. I think and ideally it would be expanded not just to artists in the control group, but a wider group of people, ideally everyone in Ireland. That would be the fairest way of doing it, and obviously the most expensive and therefore politically difficult, but hey ho, that's where we are. So unless there are any really burning questions, I think we probably have to draw it to a close there. So I just want to say thank you very much to Shane, Lauren, Alisha and Tadhg for contributing so much. It's been
Toby,
really
I think
fantastic.
Michaela wanted to just say something there as well.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Do you want to just, I don't know if that can, yeah.
No, it just, yeah, I mean, like, this is a question that kind of starting conversation about how to campaign next, is whether to campaign for the continuation and expansion of the basic income for the arts, or to campaign for UBI. There has been in Ireland a lot of, I mean, and Karen, Lauren mentioned that, about the carer being kind of made as a sort of UBI, because not to be bean tested, for instance. So I mean, I think there is definitely, I think, a case, and maybe Ireland could be it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. So thank you very much for all the comments, all the questions, to our fantastic speakers, but also thank you so much to Reinhard and Johnny and John, everyone who has been involved in making this happen, not just this event, but the previous events. It's been really fantastic to see how this has all gone, and hopefully, I don't know if there's plans to meet again in 6 months, and whether that's just lamenting the end of the trial and reflecting on what's happening next, and how we can campaign for UBI for for a different group, or for a pilot, or whether it's campaigning for everyone. But I think the Praxis campaign sounds like a really interesting one, and yeah, UBI Lab Arts would really like to be involved in that, so we'll be in touch.
Yes, if I just may want to say a few words. Yes, we are planning to have another event on the 3rd of December 2025, which would be the end of this pilot. But obviously there are all these announcements and rumors, as we just heard, going around. So we would also probably be able to discuss what has happened after the end in August, and also how artists feel about the situation after the end, and whatever the government has planned or has offered to really continue this one, as has been sort of announced. So that I would like to invite everybody to pay attention to the space, and to see whether what is happening, and then put it in your diary. We plan another event on the 3rd of December. And I just would like also to thank everybody, and also point out very important contributions again about control over time, which is actually my background, why I'm in favor of a basic income, that you have time autonomy and control it, but also the creativity, the learning, development of skills and knowledge. All this is sort of part of the basic income. And then also what you pointed out, a trial, a pilot is not really a basic income, because if you had a basic income, you wouldn't have to worry, like Alisha described, do I perform well? Do I deserve it? Will I, and so on. All this would fall away, because it would be a social foundation for either all the artists or for everybody, which is my option and would be the best choice. So thanks a lot. Thank you, Toby, for facilitating this interesting discussion, and thank you, Alisha, Lauren, Shane, Tadhg, for your very interesting contributions. I learned a lot, and I suppose everybody else learned a lot. So thanks a lot. Great to have you. And I hope you have a good summer, everybody, despite the worry about the end of the trial and the pilot, and still have a good summer, and hope to see you again in December. And thanks a lot to everybody.
Yeah,
Thanks
thanks.
for
And
coming.
also thanks to Jenny for your contribution as well. It was really interesting to hear about the report. So yeah, sorry I missed you earlier on.
Yes,
Thanks
thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. That was
Pleasure.
excellent.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
Have a good
everybody.
time.
See
Good
you
summer.
soon.
See you
Bye.
soon.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. And thanks, Johnny, for your technical support. Excellent. Thank
Sure.
you, Johnny.
Thanks a lot, guys.